Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder how our brains talk to themselves, especially when we're actually doing something, not just relaxing? Today we're diving into a fascinating study that uses some really cool brain scanning tech to see how different parts of the brain communicate in real time. So imagine your brain is like a bustling city with thousands of tiny workers, neurons, all sending messages to each other. Scientists want to understand how these messages flow, especially when you are focused on a task like playing a game or watching a movie. Traditionally, it has been easier to study this brain communication when people are just resting. But what happens when you're actually engaged in something? That is the big question this research tackles. They've developed this super advanced computer program to track brain communication live, even when you are busy. Think of it like this. We know how to monitor brain signals when someone's just sitting there, and we can see patterns. But when that person starts a task, things get way more complicated and dynamic, like a city experiencing rush hour. This new framework is designed to handle that complexity, to see how the brain's communication changes second by second during specific activities. It's a big step because most of this real-time brain talk analysis has only been done when people are relaxed. So the core challenge here is that our brains aren't just constantly doing one thing, they switch gears. When you are doing a task, there are specific moments, like when a stimulus appears, or you need to make a decision that cause tiny but important temporary shifts in brain activity. This study wants to see if their new method can track these shifts accurately in real time. They want to know if they can tell the difference between the brain's normal background chatter and the specific messages zipping around when you are actively doing something. The researchers set out to answer a few key questions. First, how well does their live or online method match up with the super detailed offline analysis they do later in the lab? They tested this on different types of brain data, continuous streams from watching videos and data from tasks that had specific events. They also looked at how well their system could pick out the brain activity happening during a task compared to the calmer periods between tasks. To do this, they used data from a large group of kids and teenagers, which is great because studying brain development is super important. They used a high-density EEG system, which means they had lots of little sensors on the scalp to get a really detailed picture of brain activity. Imagine all those little sensors on a cap. They used over 100 sensors on each person's head. Then, to make things easier to understand, they grouped these sensors into larger areas of the brain, like the front, back, and sides, which they call regions of interest, or ROIs. This is like looking at whole neighborhoods in our city analogy instead of every single house. Before they could even start looking at brain communication, the raw brain signals needed a lot of cleaning. Think of it like tidying up a messy room before you can find anything. They filtered out unwanted electrical noise like static from nearby appliances and made sure the signals were as clear as possible. They also used a clever technique called independent component analysis, or ICA, to separate out different brain signals that might be mixed up. This ICA part is really important because it helps them focus on the actual neural signals and not just random noise. Now, the heart of their method is this MVerica thing. Break it down, MVera models how different brain signals influence each other over time, kind of like predicting the next move in a complex game of chess based on all previous moves. ICA, as we mentioned, helps separate independent sources of brain activity. Putting them together, MVerica allows them to look at these directed influences, meaning they can see if brain area A is really talking to brain area B, or if it is just a coincidence. And importantly, they're doing this in real time, meaning as the data is coming in, not just after the experiment is completely done. They set up two ways to analyze the data. One was the old school, detailed offline method that is considered the best. The other was their brand new online method. They fed the exact same clean brain data into both systems. This way, they could be sure that any differences they saw were due to the methods themselves, not just variations in how the data was prepared. To analyze the data, they chopped it up into small chunks, like taking snapshots. For continuous data, like watching a video, they use regular 2-second intervals. For the more structured tasks, they center their analysis around specific events like a stimulus appearing. This allows them to see what the brain is doing right before, during, and after those important moments. Once they had these data chunks, they applied their MVR model. This model tries to figure out how past brain signals predict current brain signals across all their sensors. Then, using ICA on the residuals, that is the part of the signal the MVR model couldn't explain, they refined their understanding of the brain's internal communication pattern. This is where they get their source-informed connectivity estimates, which are supposed to be more accurate because they account for the physical spread of signals in the head. A really important part of their method is checking for stability. Imagine a complex system that's supposed to return to normal after a nudge. If it keeps getting more and more unpredictable or chaotic, it is unstable. In their brain models, stability means the brain's communication patterns are behaving in a way that makes sense physiologically. And not just randomly fluctuating or growing out of control, they made sure most of their analyses were based on stable models. They also compared their online method with the offline one in terms of how well they picked key brain activity versus resting activity. This is particularly interesting for the task-based data. They wanted to see if their live system could reliably detect the brain changes that happen because of the task, not just because of the general background brain noise. Okay, so what did they find? After analyzing over 28,000 chunks of brain data, the results were pretty exciting. Their online system, the one designed to work in real time, did a fantastic job of matching the detailed offline analysis. When they looked at how similar the brain communication patterns were between their live method and the detailed lab method, they found a very strong match. The numbers, like the Pearson correlation, were high, meaning the patterns were very alike. This indicates their real-time method is capturing the big picture of brain communication really well. They also noticed some interesting patterns. The accuracy of their real-time estimates tended to get better for higher brainwave frequencies, like the faster brain signals. This makes sense because faster signals are often more localized and easier to track within short time windows. Another key finding was that when they looked at bigger brain regions, the ROIs instead of individual sensor points, the results were even more similar between the online and offline methods. This suggests that these larger-scale brain network interactions are more stable and easier to capture reliably in real time. It's like looking at citywide traffic patterns versus trying to track every single car. Interestingly, when they looked at the specific settings their computer models chose, there were some differences between the online and offline methods, especially for the task-based data. The live system sometimes picked slightly different model orders. Basically, how complex the model should be. But here is the coolest part: even though the settings differed, the actual brain communication patterns they measured were still remarkably similar. This suggests there might be more than one way to set up the model that still leads to the right conclusions about how the brain is communicating. Now, about real time. How fast is it really? They found that their system could process the data and give a brain communication result very quickly. The total time it took was just a little bit longer than the 2-second window they were analyzing, which is super impressive for such a complex analysis. This means it is genuinely useful for live monitoring. When it came to spotting the specific differences between brain communication during a task versus between tasks, they saw a big difference depending on what they looked at. If they focused on the super detailed connections between individual points on the scalp, the online and offline methods didn't always agree on which specific connections were significant. But when they looked at the broader brain regions, the ROI level analysis, they found that both the online and offline methods were much more likely to agree on which regions were showing task-related changes in communication. This again points to the idea that looking at larger brain networks is more robust for real-time analysis. So, what does all this mean? The main takeaway is that this new online system for tracking brain communication is a big deal. It is reliable, it is fast enough for real-time use, and it can handle different types of brain activity, from just chilling to actively doing a task. It's a way to peek into the brain's conversations as they happen, which could revolutionize how we study the brain. The fact that the online estimates closely match the detailed offline ones is a huge win. It means they've essentially created a high-performance engine that can estimate brain communication live. This has massive implications for understanding how we learn, how we pay attention, and even how our brains function when things go wrong, like in developmental disorders or mental health conditions. Imagine being able to monitor how a child's brain is communicating during a learning activity in real time, or how communication patterns change in someone with ADHD when they're trying to focus. One important nuance they found is the difference between actually estimating brain communication and proving that a change is statistically significant. While the estimates line up well, pinpointing the exact small connections that change during a task can be tricky, especially with the strict rules for statistical significance. But when they zoomed out to look at larger brain regions, the picture became much clearer and more consistent. This tells us that for real-time applications focused on understanding broad network dynamics, looking at ROIs is likely the way to go. The speeds they achieved are also really important. The fact that the processing is so fast means this technology could be integrated into tools for things like neurofeedback, where you might get real-time cues to help you regulate your brain activity. It could also be used in more naturalistic settings like virtual reality experiences to see how the brain responds to complex, real World stimuli. What is next? The researchers themselves point out that even though this system is great, there is always room to improve. One challenge is dealing with truly naturalistic environments, where brain activity is constantly shifting in complex ways, not just in neat little packets. They also mentioned the potential for combining this brain communication analysis with other signals like eye movements or body posture, to get an even richer picture of what is going on. And imagine if we could even use this real-time information to help guide brain stimulation or therapy in real time. That's the kind of exciting future they're envisioning. This study is a fantastic example of how we're getting better and better at understanding the complex dance of our brains. It's not just about seeing where the brain is active, but understanding how different parts are talking to each other, moment by moment, especially when we're engaged in life. It's opening up new doors for research and potentially for helping people with various brain-related challenges. What do you guys think about this cutting-edge brain communication tech? Does it surprise you how much they can track in real time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this dive into neuroscience, please hit that like button, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more explorations into the fascinating world of psychology and neuroscience, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.